It's been a wild ride. I can't believe we've basically been hibernating for a few weeks. I don't know about you, but my family has some serious cabin fever, and we cannot wait for this time to be over. But here we are, and today I want to talk about real estate because it's been a fascinating ride just to see how is the market responding to the pandemic and what's going on out there. And so I want you to get a sense of where the market's at right now, some things to watch, and I'm going to close with some tips. And I hope this will be very practical. I have some brand new visuals to share today I've been working really hard on. I hope you like them. This is Ryan with SacramentoAppraisalBlog.com. This will be about 20 minutes. Let's jump in. So here are new listings in the Sacramento region by week. Okay, and you can kind of see that this past week was down about 20% compared to just a few weeks ago. And so we've seen a very noticeable difference in the market where sellers are backing off, where they've clearly said, hey, we are not going to list because we don't want people coming through our homes, or we're not confident, or whatever the issue is. All right. But one of the interesting things is that this past week there were 566 new listings. Now, I think a lot of people judge the market and say, well, this market is dead. I think they would be actually shocked to know that there were that many new listings that hit the market. But what's interesting is that that's up from the previous week from 445 listings. Now, I wouldn't make too much of this to say that hey, the market started to rebound and we're just going to see listings go up and up and up. I mean, maybe, maybe not, Kate. What we want to do is watch a pattern over a number of weeks before we call something a trend. But it is important to note that I think over this past week, we did see news of real estate agents becoming essential in California. That may have fueled more listings hitting the market, even though some local associations said, hey, time out, you're actually not essential locally. This could have made a difference, or it's possible that some sellers are looking at, the pending still happening and thinking, hey, I want to jump back in, or I can sell my property in this market despite the lockdown. So those are my ideas. We'll watch this over time. Here's a brand new visual. I really, really like this one. There's a lot of squiggly lines going on here, but I want to explain why this is so powerful. Okay. And by the way, if you need any of these images, send me an email. And I'm also posting them on Facebook and such. I mean, use these in your newsletters and, articles you're writing or whatever. Okay. But here's 2020 new listings in red since March. Okay. This is a graph that we just looked at. Like I said, that it's this week was down 20%. Okay. This is that same graph, but in the background are listings in gray from 2019. And so we could essentially compare where would the market maybe normally be if we weren't in a pandemic. And so this is a very powerful data point because when we see last year at this same week compared to this week, new listings were down by 37%. And that's a much more significant stat than down from 20% just a few weeks ago. Okay, in other words, there were 901 new listings this week last year in 2019 compared to 566. And so we've seen a very definitive difference in the number of listings hitting the market. Properties with a hold status since March 12th. March 12th was sort of our Tom Hanks day and sort of when things really kicked up. And they really, really kicked up around the 14th and 15th or so. But there's been 469 listings on hold. And so that's very significant. It sort of seemed to find a rhythm lately. Still definitely up from where it was in the beginning of the year, though. Here's a unique way to look at holds. This type of graph is called a histogram. And you can see prices at the bottom. And what this basically shows is how prices are dispersed for hold properties. And so you can kind of see that throughout the market, through every price range, we're seeing properties on hold. Now, it makes sense that there's much less, dispersed at higher prices because there's a whole lot less listings. And so this shape is actually fairly normal. But it just goes to show that even though the market is aggressive under 400, I mean, look, there's about 60 properties under 400 that are on hold between 300 and 400. It just shows that sellers at all price ranges have pulled their stuff from the market. It's not just one level. Okay, but what we want to watch over time, what's going to happen above a million? What about under 400,000? What about particular neighborhoods? Let's keep an eye on, is the trend different based on location? Okay, here's a conversation on Twitter this week. Someone said, as someone that was going to be listing last week, it was an easy decision to pull off the market. We have no place to go when we sell. All right, I think a lot of sellers can relate to this, or they just think that we don't really want to be shopping for another home right now. Or what if they could get into contract, but they're not supposed to be, shopping or going on the interior of other homes. It makes real estate more difficult to happen right now and more subdued. Clearly, the market is suppressed in light of the pandemic and shutdown or lockdown. So here's canceled listings in the Sacramento region. There's been 380 since March 12th. A little bit less lately. It sort of seemed like we sort of peaked out with both holds and canceleds. Between hold listings and canceled, there's been 849 since March 12th. And so that's a really significant, unreal number to think that there's 849 listings that would either be on the market right now or in contract, or some of them already sold. Here's a different way to look at cancellations. Since March 12th, here's where all these properties were canceled. And well, I wanted to show it this way, and you can look at this in a map search in MLS, because it's important to just ask the question, is the market behaving the same way by location and price range? Are we seeing more cancels in various prices? Okay, and on that note, here's a histogram to show how cancels are dispersed throughout the market. You can put the video on pause and look at this, or just email me for the graph. But I would say that the shape of this histogram, it's probably what we would expect. And to me, right now at least, it shows that cancels are fairly uniform throughout all price ranges. But what we want to look for, especially as jumbo loans are going away, or lending has been so volatile lately, with FICO scores under, for FHA and such. I mean, are there going to be different segments of the market that are affected where we would see more cancellations? Here's pending contracts in the region since early 2020. January, pendings were clearly going up. The pandemic hits, and there's been a huge change. 46% down since early March. And here's an interesting thing where we see that this peak every week is usually Monday, sometimes Tuesday, but this last week, the market didn't peak out on Monday, or we didn't have this normal dramatic peak. And so the market was showing a weekly rhythm, but over this past week, that rhythm was really disrupted. And so it's hard to say why, or even if this will be a trend. We want a few weeks to establish a trend, but it is possible that sellers are more prone to accept offers more readily. And we might see that by days on market. Okay, sellers have lost power, and I'd imagine some sellers are aware that if they have someone on the hook, they better start reeling in right away. And so my sense is that buyers can shop whenever they want. Normally, pendings peak out on Monday because you have buyers shopping more over the weekend, and then sellers review offers on Monday. And so it peaks out on Monday when offers are accepted. Sometimes that's Tuesday. And so, will we see a market in the future where buyers are more prone to shop on different days and sellers would accept more readily? I mean, we'll see. But I think it's something to keep in mind. Sellers, you have to listen to buyers. You have to know your place in this market. All right. You very well might get multiple offers still, particularly at some price ranges, but don't expect a market of 10 offers, and don't expect to be in total control and ignore the requests that the buyers are making. So here's a different way to look at recent pending sales over the past few weeks. You can see there's been a very, very clear and decisive difference. It's very obvious. And so I'll talk about prices in just a sec, but I just want to say that we see the current market with what's happening with the listings and what's happening with the pendings. And in each neighborhood market, what I want you to ask is, what's happening right here in this price range, in this segment? Are there more properties getting into contract than not? Are listings starting to sit? What's happening to prices? I mean, we ask all these questions on the micro level in each neighborhood, but clearly the macro level, I mean, there's no mistaking that the market has changed. It is 100% a different market today than it was just 3 to 4 weeks ago. Here's a different way I'm visualizing the market. Do you guys like this? Here's a chart that shows market change by the week. Okay, if you like this, I'll keep doing this. Let me know. Please give me feedback. But you can see new listings, pendings, canceled, and hold. Maybe you can pause the video and walk through this. But basically, you can see listings have declined, except over the past week. They rebounded a little bit, more listings. Pendings have clearly declined. Canceleds and holds, it's just what I showed you on the visual. They sort of, peaked out, and then there were less cancellations and holds over this past week. All right. So something to watch there. One of the most important things, one of the big mistakes that can happen in real estate, especially for real estate professionals, is to focus too much on March sales. And so the reality is that the median price in March was up by 3.5% from February. And so the median price in February was 425,000, and then now it's 444,000 or 440,000. So the temptation is to say, "Oh my gosh, the market's crazy. I can't believe we saw price increases during a pandemic. This is nuts." And it just shows that this market is alive and all is well. But here's the problem. Okay, most sales in March actually got into contract in February and before. All right, in fact, our pandemic data, I would say, started on March 12th, and only 2.9% of all sales that closed in March got into contract March 12th or after. So basically, 97% of all sales in March have nothing to do with the pandemic whatsoever. And so we got to be really careful with what we're saying. I have a blog post where I discuss this over the past week. Please internalize that. My sense is that the pandemic data is not going to show up in the sales stats until April and then especially May, okay, and in June, of course, okay, because we're weeding out everything that got into contract in January and February and early March. And so we'll have a better idea of what prices are doing over the next few months. But here's something to watch. This is a graph from Redfin they put out regarding the United States and showing that list prices are coming down over the past couple weeks. And so one of the things that ways we can gauge change is, what's happening with listings? And we want to be asking this question on the local level. Are we seeing more price reductions? And if we start to see listings come down, then yeah, that would be a clue that, okay, if listings are coming down, then we are bound to see prices probably reduced in coming time. All right. Here's a screenshot from a webinar that Mike Del Preti did last week on Friday. It was phenomenal. And I included the link here below. I definitely encourage you to follow his stuff. This was incredibly insightful. I've been quoting Mike in almost every video because I think he's putting out very, very relevant stuff. But here's property sales in Italy. I wanted to show this because I think this relates to our market and then in many markets across the country. You can see comparing 2019 in gray with 2020 in blue. Okay, here's January, February, and March, and you can see a clear downtrend in March. There's been less sales, and this is exactly what we're going to see in the Sacramento area and in many markets because if we're seeing pending contracts down almost 50%, well, guess what? That'll mean that sales volume is down about 50% at some point. Okay, and we'll see where the numbers go exactly. Could be give or take. It could be way less, could be, a little bit more, but um, this is important to watch. And for anyone who works in real estate, you pay attention to this because that means that if we were at the 50% level, we're having 50% less deals going around. And so, like I mentioned last week, and I got that from Mike, I said that I got it from Mike. This is a market to survive, a market to remain standing, and one where you can thrive later. There's less deals going around. And so, focus heavily on your clients and what they need right now. And if they don't need real estate, then meet their other needs, whatever they need in life right now, be that person. Okay. But let's watch this and please check out his stuff. Here's something to watch. This is a graph from Lundquist, US weekly initial jobless claims over the past 50 years. And you can see just an incredible, unprecedented number of jobless claims. This is literally off the charts. And so this is something to watch. I think to be fair, we don't know exactly how the job market's going to affect the real estate market and affect the housing market. We don't know the severity of job losses yet in the Sacramento region. In California, Governor Gavin Newsom says that there's about 1.5 million jobless claims, and we obviously have one of the largest economies in the world in California, so it makes sense that that number is huge, but we don't know exactly what that will mean for our market in Sacramento. And granted, the two top employers in our market are government and healthcare, and both of those are obviously essential. But I think it's to be determined how this is expressed in the local market. There's a lot of doom, and I think my sense is that when I'm talking about the market, there's people who say, "Hey, Ryan, I just want you to say that we're going to tank because of jobless numbers." But you won't find me saying stuff like that. I will absolutely say this is a huge red flag, but we don't yet know how it's going to be expressed. I think that's fair and that's objective. without being sensational. Um, this from the LA Times, where home lenders brace for up to 15 million mortgage defaults. This is a huge headline right now. There's a lot of uncertainty right now with lenders, but I think the sense is that because job numbers are so dismal that we'll see mortgage defaults, and it's very possible if people can't pay their mortgages, or obviously renters are struggling too with paying rent, but we don't yet have data, and so what each of these articles is tending to do is that they'll paint a picture that's gloomy and say that we might see 15 million mortgage defaults, but we don't actually have data yet. And so I think we have to toggle between the two and know the possibilities, but be objective and wait for what is actual. Here's one more bit I want to share before my closing tips. This is a comment on YouTube. I was watching a video, and this person says, if real estate crashes, I'll finally become a homeowner. And I wanted to share this because it just shows that not everyone is thinking about this market right now in the same way. Okay, obviously sellers want prices to remain high and they want to, cash out. They want to make as much as possible. But you have a lot of buyers who are saying, hey, we're ready for our turn and we want lower prices. We want more affordability. But one thing I want to note though, and I don't want to be, that one guy, but I want to give a dose of reality because when a market declines, it doesn't often decline rapidly. Now that's highly possible sometimes, but I want to call attention to the Sacramento market. The last two downward price cycles we had, the market was down for almost 6 years each time, where prices declined. And so I think sometimes we have this idea that, hey, if prices decline, then I'll be able to instantly afford something in a few months. But we don't often see that dynamic. And so if someone truly is waiting for the market to change directions and to see a difference in prices, you might be waiting for many, many years. Okay. So you have to ask the question, you know, will you have a job? Will you have income and finances? Will you have confidence, 6 years down the road, or whenever it is? Okay. And so that's kind of, I think, if we take a long-term view and just realize that cycles happen for many years, that might influence our decisions of whether to buy or sell, now. Some closing thoughts. Let's jump through these real quick. So the market will keep changing. We need to continue to watch over weeks and months to understand what the market's doing. And I'll continue reporting as long as you guys are watching my videos. And then I'll do that. The market is never always good or always bad. What I mean is that it's either good or bad depending on whether you can move, sell, buy, or invest. Okay. At times we get so focused on what prices are going to do that we forget to think this way. Okay. But remember, no matter what prices do in the future, the market will still be bad or good for various people. And that's true even in this market. So watch the disparity between listings and pendings. That's something we want to watch closely. If we continue to see more listings and then less pendings, and that will put pressure on prices to soften. Okay, absolutely. Be careful of sensational narratives of price declines. I was listening to an economist this week in Southern California, and it was interesting because he mentioned there was a HGTV reality star in Southern California that spoke out and said the market in Southern California is seeing price declines. Okay, I don't want to out that person on my YouTube, but what I appreciated about The Economist is that he basically said that that was irresponsible to say because the data is not showing those sort of price declines. And so I want to mention this because we're seeing some huge changes with what's happening with listings, way less than last year. We're seeing way less pendings, but that doesn't necessarily mean that prices are declining yet. Okay, and so eventually, if a market is prolonged uncertainty, yeah, price declines I think would be something that we would expect. But for now, I don't know that data is really seeing that. And so even appraisers have to be careful in their reports, despite, pending contracts being down almost 50% right now. We still have to look and just ask the question, are pendings getting into contracts at a similar level compared to recent sales? And so we might actually say that here are all these warning flags in the market. Here are all these symptoms of the market having changed, but I'm going to call prices stable. Okay, we call it what it is, but we need to call it what it is based on the data rather than our perception of what the market should be doing or what some guru says. All right, 67% of March sales got into contract in February. I think that's a powerful stat that shows that almost everything that closed in March actually came from February. Okay. And 83% of closings in March actually happened before February and before. And so 8 out of 10 sales that closed in March actually have nothing to do with March. Okay, there are major red flags, but we still don't know the future. I mentioned that. 54% of March sales had multiple offers. Okay, while 43% of pendings since the lockdown have multiple offers. Now, I wanted to mention this. There's a couple takeaways here. Number one, March sales, 54%, that's been going up from previous months. I'll have graphs to show that out hopefully later this week. But it shows us what the market used to be like in January and February when these properties close in March. But right now, we're seeing current pendings at a lower rate. Now, on one hand, we look and say, hey, the market is still moving. 43% of all pendings since March 20th have more than one offer. I mean, I'm hearing even some cases there were 5 to 7 offers in certain price ranges. You price it right, there is demand out there. But I think we have to recognize there's less demand though also. Okay. Watch the weekly rhythm carefully. Like I said, we saw a little bit of a funky rhythm this week with pendings, and so, to be determined. I love woodworking on a side note. I'll share a picture in my closing slide, the next slide. I made these blocks that say hope, and I want to give them away to locals. If you want one, I can get one to you. You can pick it up on the side of my house. No germs. I can wipe them down, or I can just hold one for you. When until all this thing is over, then I can get it to you in a few months or whenever that's going to be. Just send me an email and I'll pick names at random. But last but not least, be safe, cultivate peace. Okay, I just hope and pray that you'll have peace in your life this week. It's never about what's happening in the real estate market. It's all about what's going on in our lives, and may we have peace. So that was me. Here's my hope blocks. I hope this was helpful. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Comment below. Let's keep the conversation going. Guys, I really appreciate you. Thanks so much.